A peaceful transition is coming. Trump will not be sworn in as the 45th President of the United States on January 20th. Trump will take office as the 19th President of the United States on March 4th under the restored republic. Let me explain. You believe you live in a nation called United States of America. This nation hasn't existed since 1871, when this country ceased to be a nation and became a corporation belonging to the City of London. Every time you see an American flag with a gold fringe and gold tilt attached to it, it represents the corporation, not the country. This is the reason you can never make progress financially. This is why the law always seems to be against the average citizen, while the rich and the elite literally get away with murder and worse things. If Biden, Harris, Pence, Pelosi, etc. are arrested for their crimes before January 20th, there will be no one to assume the presidency. Since Trump has not been certified as the presidential winner by Congress, he cannot remain president. If there is no president on January 20th, the corporation known as the United States of America will be dissolved. The military will then become the guardians of the nation during the transition. People will then have irrefutable proof that the election was stolen by foreign entities and that Trump was chosen by a landslide. Trump then assumes the presidency as the 19th President of the United States. The last president elected before America became a corporation was Ulysses S. Grant. Republic restored.
The facts matter.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are currently at. It's January 26th of 2021, and this is where we are at. Now, I'm going to make this statement once and once only, and if you miss it, it's just too bad. This is a very important video. If you want to know what to be concerned about and what to strive to stop, if you care, if you really honestly care about the Constitution as the Patriots claim, if you really honestly care about democracy, then you need to listen to what's going on here. As you guys know, for the last several years, I have been deep into researching the Sov-Cit movement and all of those that branch off of that movement, and there are many. Some of you will be shocked to hear just how close up you actually are to this movement and how it's affected your lives already. I don't care what side of the political spectrum that you are on. I don't care if you're a centrist, an independent. I don't care if you are a moderate Republican. I don't care if you are just over the edge to being almost fringe yourself. I don't care if you are liberal and progressive, whatever you may be. This should concern you. No, let me rephrase that. This should scare the shit out of you. When a group of people take up claiming that they back the blue, and when a group of people take up claiming that they are for law and order, and then do everything to break that, to break law and order, to go against everything in the Constitution. Yeah, we got a real problem, ladies and gentlemen. A real problem. These are not people that are on either side of the political spectrum. These are simply criminals. Some of them are knowing, very well knowing what they're doing, and others are completely and totally misled.
To know where the phrase, "it's not over till the fat lady sings," came from. So I did a little bit of research. Turns out it's a colloquialism or a proverb, which means don't presume to know what happens until it happens. Well, today Joe Biden was inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States of America for this Constitution. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was created and signed. In 1788, the Constitution was ratified. In 1789, the Bill of Rights was created as well, which is the first 10 or so articles in the Constitution. Now, in this original document, the power was given to we the people. Somewhere along the line, the power was sold from we the people to the feds, the federal government. Well, President Trump signed the Insurrection Act. That gives us, we the people, the power again. So, what does that mean? It means that in March, President Trump is going to be the 19th president under the original Constitution.
Q. Although the plug has been pulled and the person running Q has said, hey, you know what, we had a great run. But unfortunately, it's over with now, and everybody needs to move on. Well, that wasn't good enough. Q has started a whole new conspiracy built upon several other conspiracies, and I am not talking about true conspiracies. I'm talking about conspiracies that are largely Sov-Cit based, and worse, they're using the Moore's paperwork to do it. Let's talk about this. So Q thinks Trump will become president again on March 4th. As you heard from the video that I played before I started this, they're convinced of it and very, very proud of it. And of course, there's an element of, oh, screw you to whoever doesn't believe me in it, which makes it all the more precious. Q has started to merge with even more extreme conspiracy theory movements, including, of course, the Sov-Cit movement, as I said. So they believe that Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 19th President of the United States on March 4th, 2021. This is the very latest that Q followers have embraced in the wake of President Biden's inauguration last week, and extreme experts are worried that it highlights the way Q adherents are beginning to merge their beliefs about the world being run by an elite cabal of cannibalistic Satanist pedos with even more extreme ideologies. Let's not even mention the fact that those extreme ideologies are dangerous people too. The latest claims being made by Q echo those of the Sov-Cit movement, a group of people who believe they're not governed by the same laws as everyone else. That belief has led to violent confrontations with law enforcement, and they're among the top of extreme threats that face our country. There is some crossover between Q and the Sov-Cit movement that was in there before, but I've seen Sov-Cit ideas about the United States being a corporation become more popular with Q and beyond since January. It's concerning. It means Q is borrowing ideas from more established extreme movements. Sov-Cits believe that a law enacted in 1871 secretly turning the United States into a corporation. As you guys know, we've gone over this many times. We've gone over the debunking of this many times. The United States is not, never has been, and never will be a corporation. But they claim that it did away with the American government of the Founding Fathers and it was sold to the feds. The group also believes that President Franklin D. Roosevelt sold U.S. citizens out in 1933 when he ended the gold standard and replaced it by offering citizens as collateral instead to a group of shadowy foreign investors, in this case apparently London. The City of London. I mean, it makes no sense, as you guys know. But that's the birth certificate bonds that Harvey Dent was jumping up and down about, that got Heather Ann Tucci and Randall Keith Bean thrown in prison for years and years. 20 years collectively between the two of them. Sov-Cits use indecipherable legal filings that are based on arcane texts to separate themselves from the legal entities the government has supposedly created in their name in order to sell to investors. This is what they believe. Already discredited, already debunked arguments are what Q is now pulling from. But it gets scarier. In order to prove these things, there are people on the outside of the movement that they want to pull in that are sitting on the fence, and they ask things like, where's the bankruptcy? So it became necessary for Q to follow up with the Sov-Cit movement and try and find that bankruptcy. And let me show you what they found. Ladies and gentlemen, take a look. Dated May 4th of 2020. U.S. federal, well, this is supposedly on the White House, Washington, letterhead, number 1. And this is Roger Allen Moore, Raj Amexam Moore Raphael, with a social security number here, a taxpayer identification, talking about the United States in relation to the corporation that it is versus the country. How it's really a mexam, and there are 2 different constitutions. And this is where the bankruptcy is. In the Moors mumbo jumbo. You all might remember that I had a warning. I've had a warning for years that these groups were merging for the purpose of an overthrow. I want you to stop and think about what's been going on. Now, the fact that they are using Moore's documentation in order to prove things to people who know no better and are not educated enough to apparently, or too lazy, to look it up for themselves. They're using the Sov-Cit movement's ideology to piss people off and make them very, very angry, which, hey, they didn't need much of a push already, did they? And when all else fails, we hop on over to the religious part of it. Never to be mentioned that the Moors are Muslim. I am at a crossroads myself with this channel. What I have to submerge myself into on a daily basis in order to find out what is happening and what the plans are is worse than toxic. Lately, it's only been due to the support of as many subscribers as I have that has kept me engaged. Because I've felt like this before, as you guys know, several times in the past, and if I kept pushing, eventually it would go away. But there's something different about what's going on right now. The difference is that instead of me saying, look out, there's movement, there's mobilization, we need to be concerned. Now we have sundown states. Very recently, Iowa had to go into a sundown mode, and for those of you that don't know what that means that if you are of a certain skin tone, you best not step out of your house at dark without having a second person or more with you, because there are people that have set up traps in order to try to harm you. Yeah, that's right. Here in America. Since the riot at the Capitol, I've learned that I had about 10% of my channel, which were the very people that I was speaking out against. And it wasn't like they knew. They didn't know. They were sitting around laughing at the the Sov-Cits being arrested on the side of the road too. But their ideology ultimately lined up with the idea that somehow these things are okay. Fighting for freedom, right? That's why they were there at the Capitol. Because people that are patriots apparently desecrate and defecate even in our historical buildings that are supposed to be revered, taken care of, and cherished. When you sit in my seat, you have to watch not just one channel of news, but you must watch all of them. Why? Because the news is a money-making enterprise. That's how they keep going. And although there are news channels that are a part of a group that it requires them to stay honest, and if they don't, they can be fined and ultimately even have their licenses pulled, there's many more that are not a part of that group and are just running amok saying whatever. And when you watch what these group of people are watching as alternative news versus regular news that you know is being watched by this group in order to ensure that they don't just flat out lie, there's no accountability. And they are watching a completely different reality. All of it can be debunked, but just try it. Just try debunking these things, because these people are hateful. They didn't start out hateful, but they're hateful now. They believe things that are atrocious. And as a result, a seemingly normal teacher and mother of 4 who loved animals and wanted to open up an animal rescue and take care of dogs that had been abused and cats that had been left, a very kind individual, now was willing to march to the Capitol and watch people be hung without a trial. And that would have been okay. The absence of the almighty leader that they believe in is something that has turned people to the absolute brink of the possibility of suicide. I just got through watching a video that was on another platform where the woman was screaming and crying and begging because she knew the devil was coming to get them. Begging who they see as their God, being Donald J. Trump, the previous president of the United States, as the only one who can take them out of whatever hell they've been brainwashed into believing that they're in. Our government is screwed up, that's to be sure. But internment camps? Do you guys realize they've been trying that crap for decades? And depending on who it is that you're using it against that year, it bounces back and forth between parties. And you know what? It's not something that would have ever happened. Unless, of course, the government gets overthrown by the Sov-Cit movement, because they love the idea of kangaroo courts. Don't worry, she'll receive a fair trial before we hang her. You remember that? That was a fake arrest warrant that supposedly went out for me or for the Virgo Triad channel and the owner of the Virgo Triad channel back in 2018 by a group that called themselves the Government of the United States of America, Incorporated. This is a serious problem. For those of you that are not aware, the situation with the Capitol fell like this. A group of extreme individuals in a particular militia put together the idea of doing this based upon rhetoric that was happening. They believed that this is what the leader wanted them to do. That's what they believed. They've said that on camera. Unfortunately, they put together plans with some people who were very well aware of that building and knew exactly what would happen in the event that something broke out and senators and congressmen needed to be removed and placed in some sort of safety area. They were given instructions on how to locate them and were told to seal the doors and gas them. And that was only after actual panic buttons were physically removed from all of the offices. If you think I was kidding about the overthrow of the government and turning it into a dictatorship with kangaroo courts was a joke, I would like for you to ask yourselves, what would have happened had the plan not fallen through? And all of Congress, with the exception of a couple of Republican senators that weren't there. What would have happened if it had worked? Where would we be today? No one there to solidify anything to determine who is who in terms of the president's election, the primary election. No successors, because they're all gone. Our government has 18 successors put in place in the event that there's some kind of major disaster that occurs. You've all seen Designated Survivor or heard of it. That's what they're there for. But if you take them all out at once, it's very similar to something called the Night of the Long Knives. And for those of you who haven't heard about that, that was out of the, we'll call it the German playbook. Now, you might think that what I'm doing here is dramatic or that I'm putting too much to this, but I promise you, I've been watching this unfold for years, and I've been warning you for years, and all of these things link together the way that they are. It follows the same playbook. Just think about it. Your reality is all wrong. These individuals are told scientists are bad, doctors are bad, law enforcement, they're wrong too most of the time, especially when they don't agree with you. Facts are bad. Google's bad. The laws that are on the books are bad. And you've been lied to about everything pertaining to any of the laws that you've ever been told. Anyway, just look at Black's Law Dictionary. The illness isn't real. And even if it is real, well, it's overplayed. We're at almost 500,000 people gone. Education's bad. Those people are flippant and stuck up. They think they know every frickin' thing. And after all, they're all on the libtard side. Right? Because now Americans are bad too. There's such a divide. Such a divide and two different realities being lived. Judges are bad. Judges have always been bad, right? According to the Sov-Cit movement. But very recently, judges are super, super bad. Especially the SCOTUS ones. Everybody's bad. Everybody's lying. And the number one liars supposedly are the news, because there's not one single newsman anymore that has any integrity, right? It's all fake, right? And when you try to discredit because of the fact that you have actual factual information and you know for sure, I mean like 110% sure, that the information that's being spouted by an alternative news channel is false and you can prove it, then you just get shut down. Because no, it's the news you watch that's wrong. Doesn't matter if you have documentation to prove it. So you can't trust anyone, in other words, except for the leader. Yep, right out of the playbook. You can't trust anyone. You need to be paranoid about everything. Nobody knows the truth. Educated people are really stupid ones. You're the only one that's awake. And you've been lied to about everything. So now you're paranoid, you're terrified, and you think you need to save something. That's a recipe for an extreme person. And it just so happens that most of those extreme individuals are the very ones that find their Second Amendment very important. Hence the reason why they really appreciate stockpiling those things. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not just people on the far right. There's people on the left, too, falling for the same thing. Nothing is legitimate. Everything's a lie. You can't trust anyone, even your own doctor, your own attorney, any of the judges, no policeman. Your family doesn't see things like you do. You can't trust anybody. You are all alone in this. How dangerous is a caged animal? Now ask yourself this. How dangerous is a caged zoo? Or 2, or 3, or 10? I don't know what to do to fix this. But I know we have to start fighting to keep facts where they belong, in the forefront, and keep feelings and emotions out of this as much as possible. And we have to fight back against this, because if we don't, things are going to look very, very different in the future, and no one is going to like it, even if they think that they will. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted you to be aware of how difficult this channel is becoming for me. But even in that case, I'm still going to push through, as I've always promised you I would. And I'm going to start doing more educational videos, because the other thing that I've found out is people have absolutely no idea how this government is run. They're just being fed disinformation. They don't understand economics. They don't understand the laws. They don't even understand the difference between ideologies, or, for example, what a conservative really is, or what a liberal really is. But yet they argue with one another all day long, assuming that they do. All I know how to do is to educate. Because when it boils right down to it, the biggest problem is the lack of education. The second biggest problem is the lack of diversity, which you tend to get in your formative years when you do things like go to college. So the lack of education plays into all of this. I hope you'll stick with me. I love you guys. Bye-bye.